My name is Craig Snyder. I'm a physical therapist with North Dakota Health Center in north of North Dakota. I've been working here for approximately 12 years now. Went to college at University of Mary and been working pretty much full-time ever since then. So I'm going to talk about what a physical therapist is, what we do, who we work with, and of course the big question is how much money we make at the end. So first of all, starting off, a physical therapist is a healthcare professional that works with people that have injuries. Not just injuries, but people that have a disease or a disease process that makes them weaker, makes it difficult for them to get around physically in their homes, in their communities, at their jobs, or even with their sport as well. So first of all, what kind of degrees are offered with physical therapy? There are basically two. There's a physical therapist and there's a physical therapy assistant. So a physical therapist, typically in the state of North Dakota, requires a 4-year degree and then 3 additional years after, and then you are awarded a doctoral degree of physical therapy. The University of Mary in Bismarck, University of Jamestown, which is actually located in Fargo, both require the 4-year bachelor degree before entering into the physical therapy program. The University of North Dakota in Grand Forks does not require a 4-year degree, but there's a certain number of credits that are required to apply in. So basically you get a 4-year degree. There's a physical therapy assistant program nearby, but there is none in the state of North Dakota, unfortunately. The closest one is in East Grand Forks, Northland Community Technical College, and that program takes about 3 to 4 years to get through. The program itself is a 2-year program, but to get in you need 1 to 2 years of generals to apply to get into it. So it ends up being approximately 3 to 4 year associate degree. The difference between the two, a lot of paperwork. Physical therapists do a lot of paperwork, mainly because we do a lot of assessments, which requires more paperwork that way, actually assessing an individual, which we'll talk about with some of the tools we'll go through, as well as discharging, regulating the plan, the progress, the goals for how to treat a patient. A physical therapy assistant does not have to deal with that, but they are not as flexible with what they can do. They have to follow the guidance of the physical therapist, more or less follow the plan that is set up by the physical therapist. So, third point is tools and instruments, which is kind of the fun part of the physical therapist. We're kind of like the gadget people of the therapy or of the medical field. We have all kinds of little things that we can use, and that continues to grow and grow and grow. There's magazines and books full of fun little tools we can use for exercise and assessment and everything like that. So first I'll talk about assessment. One of the main tools we use is called a goniometer. It is basically a fancy protractor, moves, it has degrees written all around. So we can measure a joint. So let's say I have an injured elbow. I line up the 2 bars and it can tell me exactly how far my arm is straightening or bending. So if it's stuck there, that is a problem. That's only about 90 degrees. Elbows should bend a lot further than that. So that can kind of tell us how far a joint is limited or restricted. And we can use these on the necks, we can use them on shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. We even have little tiny ones that we can measure toes with even too, and individual fingers for measuring those. Speaking of fingers, we measure strength a lot as well. That is a big part of what we do. We are physical therapists, so physical means we work with the muscles mainly. So this little guy here is a little finger strength tester. So we can test individual fingers by pushing on these 2 little bars here, and the little needle will move and it'll tell us how much strength we have in our individual fingers. And there are there's standards set up for how strong fingers and hands should be for men and women based on your age, and we can kind of tell if one hand is different than the other. We also have grip testers. Okay, so instead of doing individual fingers, we can actually test the entire grip. So give that a squeeze, the little dial moves, and that can tell us how strong a hand is. also based on normative data for men and women and age. You can tell us how strong or weak you are, and then we can compare left hand to right hand. Typically, one hand is weaker than the other. Dominant hand is usually stronger. Non-dominant hand usually a little bit weaker. We also have many special tests, we call them, for assessing joint range of motion, joint mobility, nerve mobility. So if somebody has a sciatica disorder, which is pain running down the back of the leg, we can assess how tight that nerve is. People that are generally weak, we have multiple tests to determine how far they can walk in a certain amount of time, if they can walk up and down stairs, how they can transfer, and how they can move as well. A big thing now is standard-based testing. We have forms that every patient fills out when they first come in. They're called oswestries for low back. We have lower extremity functional index tests. Basically, and we can use these for people that come into dizziness, people that have headaches, neck pain, back pain, leg pain, arm pain, and that kind of gives us a good idea on what the patient feels they're able to do. And then we reassess them again to see how they progressed with therapy or did not progress, which unfortunately does happen sometimes. Physical therapists work with just about everything. So we have specialists that work with preemies in the hospital, born too early, and you may think, how do you work with an infant if they can't tell them to exercise? But they have very special techniques and very special goals in mind to help preemie babies and infants to get them to develop appropriately so they can, enter the world the way they're supposed to. Moving on into young childhood, we have therapists that specialize in treatments called sensory integration, behavioral disorders, if they're developmentally delayed, if a baby isn't walking on time or crawling on time, or let's say they're in class and they just can't really function in the classroom. There's a lot of different techniques that those therapists that are specialized to treat kids can use to help them to be more involved in their environment and progress. Adolescent age, we definitely get into more of the sport injuries. I'm also an athletic trainer, so I work a lot with people that have injured knees, injured ankles from sport, hips, low backs. It's volleyball season, so we see a lot of shoulder injuries from all the rapid overhead activities, and we do a lot of treatments with those as well. So people age, and a lot of them want to keep being active. So you're 30, 40 years old, you want to be a runner, you want to be a jogger, you want to do the things you used to do, your knees start to hurt, your hips start to hurt. We work with people that want to continue to be active but are having issues with that, so we hope to do treatments for them. Also, disease processes start later in life as well, so people that have Alzheimer's disease, strokes, heart attacks. We work a lot with cardiac rehab patients to try to get them stronger as well. The heart is a muscle. We strengthen the heart. People can continue on to do what they like to do. Chronic diseases are also very prevalent in what we do. Multiple sclerosis, which is a neurological disorder that causes the body to get weaker. ALS, also called Lou Gehrig's disease, is a similar neurological disorder. Unfortunately, some of these are very progressive, but we help to try to keep the people as strong as we can and as comfortable as we can so they can be mobile and do everything that they need to be. Parkinson's, another neurological disorder, again, progressive. But we try to help them to stay loose and to stay walking, to stay mobile, so they can stay home as long as they can as well. Arthritis is very common. I would say probably 80% of what I do, I work with people with arthritis, which is joint pain. Helping to keep those joints loose, keep them moving, so people can stay active, so they can stay at their job, so they can stay working with their children and their grandchildren and great-grandchildren as long as they can. All right, now on to the fun tools that we use. We have a variety of things. This is just a small sample of some of the things that we use. A lot of it is definitely exercise-based, as you can tell. These tools over here, this is specifically Graston. These are metal tools that we use to help ease tension in the body, working on fascia, working on scar tissue. And they're basically tools of different shape for different areas of the body that can do different things. This is a brand name tool. There are lesser brand name tools. There's plastic ones. This is just the one that some therapists here at this facility have training in, so this is what we have. And basically they will put a gel on the body and then use the tool to scrape and rub and dig to try to break up scar tissue on the arms, the hands, the back, pretty much all over the body to help ease that tension up. These are very nice because one of the downfalls of being a therapist is we do end up with arthritis in our hands, in our wrists, and our backs. If we use our thumbs and dig on the tissue and use our fingers to dig and rub on tissue, and we do that 8 hours a day on multiple patients a day, our hands do wear out. These tools are excellent because we can do very similar things with the tools that we do with our fingers, but we're holding a nice comfortable instrument that saves our hands. So nice development that is a very handy technique to use, but it also helps to preserve the therapist's function longer too. So which is what we do with people. We got to try to save ourselves as well. Another neat little gadget is electrical stimulation and ultrasound. This is a machine. The ultrasound side is this wand, and we put gel and we rub that around on the body, and it's a crystal in there that vibrates and it creates heat in the body. So we use this a lot of times before we will use these techniques to heat the tissue up to make it more pliable, and it actually just feels good. So people that get stiff, achy knees, we do ultrasound, it softens that up. People that have low back pain, we can do this on the low back to ease those muscles up, to get the body ready to do exercise or to use these techniques or to do some more aggressive stretching that we do. E-stim, I'm going to actually do it myself, but it really is kind of cool. E-stim is electrical stimulation. So we use these little patches that have a gel on the back side that'll actually stick right to the body. And there are many different settings for this. The setting I'm going to use is going to be the cool one where you can actually see the muscles contracting, can kind of contort your fingers and hands and kind of do a little weird thing. So I'm just going to stick them right in my arm here. Like that, so kind of in the muscles of the arm. And we'll see if we can fire this guy up and make my arm do some funny things here. So as I start turning this up, it's going to start to grab my hand, and my fingers and forearms are going to start to move here. I can start to feel a little tingle under this guy here, and it's not an uncomfortable tingle. This usually feels quite good. So we do this a lot of times with patients that do have pain, and it just helps to numb that pain down and make everything move easier. So a lot of times we'll do this first, soften things up, a little bit of heat, and then they can start to exercise. Okay, I'm on the verge of my hand starting to make a fist. Okay, right here. So if I keep turning it up, my finger up there, my hand goes there. Yeah. So that is a little fun little contraction we got on that finger. So where I got those pads at, it's overstimulating these fingers here because I can still move those really easy, so I'm not getting any current into those. But these ones here, it's like I got a cramp. Okay. I'm going to turn that down because that's kind of uncomfortable. So this setting here, I have a healthy arm. There's nothing wrong with it. Everything works fine. So it really does some weird things. A lot of times after a surgery, particularly a knee surgery, the thigh muscle just shuts down. It just does not want to work. So people can't walk. They can't straighten their leg. They can't lift their leg. They can't get out of bed because they can't move that. And just looking at the leg, telling it to tighten, doesn't work. So we will attach these electrodes onto the thigh muscle, and we will slowly turn it up until we get a nice little contraction like that. And I will press start so it's relaxed. So it's relaxed right now. The patient will relax. And when it kicks on, we'll tell them, okay, try to squeeze that muscle. So they try to make a tight thigh muscle, or they try to make a fist, and then they relax. And then it'll kick back on in a couple seconds here. There she goes. There it goes again. So now we'd be contracting again. So the stimulation helps to wake up the muscle. So it's artificial. It's not like a real contraction. But if we can feel that contraction, it helps the brain to start to work to get everything moving again as well. Okay. Moving on to the exercise world here. We have therapy balls, which a lot of fitness professionals use. They work well for strengthening the core. We have an array of kettlebells, which are very handy for strengthening the back, strengthening the forearm, the grip. We use them for carrying, for lifting off the floor, to teach people how to lift with proper body mechanics, how to move correctly, and basically just strength. It has a wonderful little handle on it so people can grab it and pick it up and simulate lifting activities if they have to get back to work, or if they just want to work in their garden again and they can't bend over to work in their garden. It can help that. These are stretchy bands. It's like a big rubber band that flexes out. People that injure their shoulders a lot of times, we will have them do some shoulder exercises. We can do elbow exercises. Just like with the forearm I was working, we can do forearm exercises. So when things are working correctly and the body can move, then we start to progress to these things. Dumbbells work the same way. Very common tool. We have weights varying from 1 pound up to 50 pounds in our clinic. This is just a little 4-pounder. And we will use them on just about every patient as well, whether it's a leg injury or an arm injury. So if it's a leg injury, we have them lift them and carry them. If it's an arm injury, we do curls and presses and those basic exercises. This little guy is a squishy foam pad, and it works on balance. Balance is a very important thing that we work with. A lot of people, when they get older, if they can't live in their home anymore, a lot of times it's because of weakness, and it's also because of balance. If somebody cannot walk safely, they fall down. If a patient falls down, they break a hip, they break a shoulder, they get injured, and then they can't return home. So a lot of what we do, especially with our elderly population, is working on balance. And this pad is a big part of what we do. And a lot of times, depending how bad their balance is, we cannot start with this. I mean, this is very difficult to stand on. So some people, standing with their feet together, they get very wobbly. They can't stand. So we start with that, using parallel bars to help. So if they need to fall, we can grab them. We have belts on them, so we can put a belt on so we can hold them as well. When they can do that, then we progress to standing on this little foam pad. And then we can do some ankle rocking, we can do some knee bending, we can do some marching. And it's squishy, so it throws their balance off. And a lot of times we put somebody on here for the first time, and they're just weaving and wobbling all over the place because they have a hard time standing. From there, we go 1 foot, okay? And you can see I don't have any major balance issues, but my ankle is wiggling down there. Probably more than it should be. So my ankle is working, my knee is working, my hip is working to try to maintain that balance. So if I stand on the ground, as I get steady, my ankle is not going to move much, hopefully. There you go. I'm settling in, okay? Stand on here, it's much harder to not move that ankle, because as you get your body weight shifting one side, it squishes, so then you got to overcorrect, and then you move a little more one way or the other. If they can do that, they're doing pretty darn good. But we do get athletes in here that have imbalances, not so much balance issues, but little weaknesses here or there. So then we have them doing some leg movements up and down. We have them do a little knee bends up and down to help promote that strength. So very, very popular tool we use on a lot of people. And there, most older adults, we don't use this. This is called a Bosu Ball, B-O-S-U, Bosu. This guy really challenges the balance. That thing wiggles all over the place. So typically we'll have people stand with both feet, and getting on it can be a little tricky sometimes. Like so, okay? And then if you had a knee injury, a lot of times you stand on it and the thing will just wiggle and wobble and waffle back and forth. But if they're steady, we'll have them consciously move it forward, move it back, move it left, move it right, move it in circles. We can throw a ball at them, which I have a purple Vikings ball back there for you Vikings fans. We can throw that back and forth, and that will get their attention off their balance and into catching. So we'll do that with athletes quite a bit as well. When they're good on 2 feet, then we switch to 1 foot. So standing on this with 1 foot, especially if they've had ankle, hip, or knee injuries, this thing will start to wiggle and waffle all over the place, and they gotta stop and touch down and reset and come back on, and it starts wobbling again. After 2 or 3 times, it starts to settle in. The balance gets better, and then we can start doing the same things. Forward, back, in, out, little circles. Woo, there we go. Well, that's not on purpose. Leg in and out, now side to side, ball catching, all on one foot. Okay? It works this way as well. It's called a Bosu Ball, both sides up. That's kind of what that means. So it's a really interesting little device. This material is the exact same as these exercise ball materials. So they are really quite durable. They last a long time. So we do single leg stuff on this, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do it. Here we go. Woo. So basically a lot of the same stuff on there. Doing this side up, I find typically works the ankle a little bit more than the knee, actually, because the ankle wiggles a lot more. Who do we work with? We've kind of touched on that off and on as we've gone here, from the different diseases of people that we work with, different conditions, from athletes with ankle sprains to, we haven't talked about motor vehicle accidents, but people with very complex injuries in car accidents. We've seen in our facility here in Northwood, we've had people that have had multiple fractures throughout their body that we rehab and get them back as well, using all these same tools. Sometimes it's very basic. We start from basically how to stand up, and we kind of go from there. As far as other professionals that we work with doctors on a daily basis. Doctors are pretty much the gatekeepers. They tell us who we need to work with and what we can do with them. So doctors will send them to us. If we're in a hospital setting like we are here, it's a small rural hospital, we work with nurses, CNAs, LPNs, RNs on a daily basis, communicating back and forth with them on how the patients are doing and what we can do and can't do and how the patient is feeling. We work with the families as well. Sometimes some of our patients can't communicate well, so we communicate with the families to see what they could do before or what they need to do to return home, or just to keep them informed on the condition of their loved one, because they're in a place that they aren't usually in. Things are not going well if they're in a hospital, just to kind of keep everybody calm and working that way. There are other professionals that do similar things that physical therapists do. There are occupational therapists. They will use many of the same devices that we do as well, but their goal is more on functional activities such as dressing, going to the bathroom, things like that, how to use your hands and manipulate stuff. They use a lot of gadgets and tools as well. We use tools like this to help get somebody stronger. A lot of the tools that the occupational therapists use, they use them to help manipulate buttons, how to grab stuff, how to lift their legs, so grabbers like that. So, physical therapy assistants we talked about. There's occupational therapy assistants as well, and there's speech therapists we work with also on a daily basis. Not to mention, managers and business people as well. There's an insurance world to medical care, and we do have to deal with that as well, unfortunately, but also fortunately, because people can receive our services because they have insurance. What do physical therapists get paid? That's kind of what the $1 million question is. In North Dakota, our national therapy wage is actually very similar to the national average. I just looked that up the other day, and I was actually kind of surprised by that. I thought typically North Dakota wages are a little bit lower, but in the physical therapy world, we're kind of right in that mid-range. So depending on specialty, depending on years of experience, physical therapists range between $60,000 and $91,000 a year. Average is around $71,000 a year. So, thank you very much.